The idea that you start out on an ultra running journey and there are all these bigger races worldwide which you hear about and dream about. There is a process, but more importantly, experience, a huge amount of hard work, and years of dedication go into your ultra running journey. Snowdonia, Wales, a well-known UK spot for walking, running, and adventure. Also the home to the UTMB World Series event, UTS. Hello and welcome to the Ultra Running Podcast with me, Coach Marshy. I hope you are all well and your running is going well. So we are going to welcome a guest into today's show. So let's bring in today's guest. We have Mike today. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Thanks very much for having me. Looking forward to answering your questions and having a good chat.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on, Mike. We really appreciate it. So before we dive into anything specific, Mike, sort of tell us who you are sort of day to day, what you do for a living and what you do in and around the running world.
Yeah, sure. I'm the race director of Ultra Trail Snowdonia by UTMB. So I work for UTMB now, developing that event. I also have a few other events in Snowdonia, which I run through a separate company called Apex Running. I used to do a bit of coaching and some other stuff as well. But events weren't my background, but that's what I do now. It keeps me busy.
And is that a full-time role now with UTMB and then obviously your own events as well?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, full-time employed by UTMB. Set up a UK company to manage that, have the other events on the side. Just more as fun hobby events.
Yeah, so I'm going to want to talk about that, and we can unpack that in a little while. But before we do that, sort of talk to me about your own sort of running journey and where that started and originated from, and sort of where you've got to with that. And
Sure.
I'm guessing that's led you to where you are now, right, in your job.
Yeah. Going back to when I was a kid, like mountain biking was my passion growing up. Started racing cross country from the age of 10 until like 18, and I was just absolutely all focused on cycling. It really was my life until about the age of 18. Went to uni, still carried on mountain biking, but I first actually sort of discovered trail running. I'd known about fell running from family visits to the Lake District and stuff. I've got family up there, and I'd seen these events happen with people running around in the hills in their skimpy shorts and vests, and thought, wow, that sort of left an impression on me. But I didn't properly sort of educate myself about what fell and trail running is until I read the seminal book Feet in the Clouds, which is probably a lot of people's first expose into fell running and what that entails, and the Bob Graham round. So I read that in my last year at uni, and then I was going to study a master's, but I really wanted to live with my gran at the time in the Lake District, so I decided to take a year out and actually had a job as a design engineer, and that meant that I could like really do loads of running in the Lake District, and that's really when I fell in love with long distance trail running, really training for the Bob Graham round myself, and I managed to complete that. It wasn't pretty, but I got round in 2013, so that was my first sort of big sort of delving into the world of ultra distance stuff. Obviously I'd raced mountain bikes up to that point. Those races are like 90 minutes, so very different. And then one thing led to another, really, and I then discovered the Lakeland 100 race, and the idea of actually racing these distances really captured my imagination. And I entered that in 2014. Managed to finish, surprised myself with a top 5 place there, and just under, I think it was under 24 hours. And that's when I sort of realized, hey, I'm okay at this. And I really sort of started to think about bigger challenges. That was around the time a couple of years before I'd heard about UTMB for the first time. So that to me seemed like the next progression, like, okay, similar distance, but in the Alpine region. And yeah, UTMB seemed to have this big a status and a sense of grandeur above anything that I'd experienced. So naturally, my sights were set on that then. Yeah, I didn't get in 2014, but then I did on the second try in 2015. Yeah, slogged myself around that. And then 16 and 17 were spent kind of, I was freelancing as a product designer. And all my sort of focus and energy was on trail running and exploring my limits as an athlete, really, and seeing what I was capable of. And that sort of culminated with a top 10 at the CCC race in 2017. I think to date that was my performance I'm most proud of. And it was off off the back of that I sort of had a choice to make. Do I go back to a design engineer, product design career, or should I take a punt on this event idea, which it had been developing in the back of my mind for a couple of years up to that point. And yeah, that's when I launched UTS. And I'm not going to say I never look back, because there's definitely been times the last few years when I've questioned my choices, and there's been some tough stuff to get through, COVID, the obvious one. But yeah, so far so good. That was 4.5 years ago now, so here we are today. Yeah,
so without being cliche, because I think everyone gets asked this in any business these days, certainly I have in the fitness world, but I think obviously with an events company, a running events company, COVID would have hit that really hard, right? And it probably made you question it, like you just said then.
Yeah.
Was it like make or break at one point where you decided that you're going to have to stop this, or how did it go?
I was really lucky, just due to timings. If I'd set up my company or events, like even I think it was just 1 year later, I wouldn't have benefited from any of the sort of support, which I thankfully did. The Welsh government had a cultural recovery fund that saved the day. If it wasn't for that, because in Wales the laws were all different, in England events could still go ahead if there were COVID precaution measures in place. Wales, it was just, there was nothing. So I was tearing my hair out from March to September, October 2020, just wondering what I've had to cancel all my events. I've got no there's income I can defer to the next year, but I'm like effectively just eating into entry fee revenue, which it was tough. And there will be other companies out there that if they set up a bit later, a bit closer to COVID, they wouldn't have got any support, and I really feel for them. I was very lucky.
So just taking all in, unpacking what you just said there as you took us through that journey. So inevitably you've ended up where you are because your passion kind of ended up becoming now what you do day to day.
Pretty much.
Just tell me about that, because I think I'm in a similar position to that, but people don't understand that, sometimes you just end up somewhere you didn't really expect to.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did that work for you?
Yes, it's a good question. The honest answer is I didn't really have any business plan. I didn't have much of a plan at all. I just wanted to host this event and see what I learned along the way. And if it turned out that it might have a potential financially, then great. If it tanked, then at least I tried and I'd scratched that itch, and I could go back to product design knowing that I'd given it a good shot. But I think like turning your passion into your profession does have its risks as well. It's I get a lot of people that I mean, it's nice that they think this of my career, but it might look like it's a very dreamy job, but it can be tough at times as well. And that I think any business owner will tell you that there are freedoms and opportunities, but there are also constraints, and it's all it's hard to switch off. I don't have that Friday feeling anymore, because it's the days roll into each other and there's always something on your mind, that kind of thing. But it's all good.
I'll echo that, and also say it's nice to hear someone else say that, because that's how it is for me as well. So sort of owning my own gym, and that's how it works. So the listeners that listen regularly will know that. And I think running as a passion, there's always going to be a grey area between what is work and what isn't work. And actually,
absolutely. I think
it's that lifestyle business, right?
Yeah, so there was a little plan actually that I would do coaching and this one event, and it would maybe afford me the time and flexibility to keep training, doing bagging those 20-hour weeks, and I could keep traveling and racing. But as it turns out, events are actually they take a lot more time and effort, and slowly over the last few years come to accept that maybe my competitive racing days, never say never, but those days are behind me for the next year or so.
Yeah, and I think I'll echo that. I've only worked on like small half marathons, but people's perception are that you put a few signs out and you kind of build a website, take some money, and do a bit of registration on the day, and that's it. But people don't see the unwritten work. The untangible stuff, like
Yeah,
all the written documentation around safety,
yeah.
risk assessments, and whatever. And
Well,
for
there's so
you
much.
guys, that must be horrendously big.
Yeah, not so much the risk assessments and stuff, but as the event's grown, it's sort of the peripheral stuff has grown with it, really. And when I think when people come and experience an event and just experience the finished article, it's quite easy. And this was me in 2014 and 15, being at Lakeland 100 and looking around, and there's a marquee. It all seemed quite, I could do this. But yeah, I mean, there's so much to it. Yeah, marketing and looking after the books, and loads of stuff that around the event, because you're not just an event organizer, you're running a company as well and trying to develop something, and that comes with a lot of extra, I don't want to say baggage, but stuff that eats into your time. And it's not just about the events themselves.
So let me just get this right for everyone who's listening. The UTS for you was the event that you started with, and like you just said, it's the one event that you wanted to go with originally, but that's kind of developed into Apex Running now with other races. So tell us a little bit about Apex Running as well.
Yeah, sure. So I had an idea just initially for one event, Ultra Trail Snowdonia. My goal with that was just to see how it went, but in the back of my mind, I did want it to grow to a point where it might be an Ultra Trail World Tour event within sort of 5 years. But I think it was late 2000 and summer 2018 when I sort of bought a bit of event equipment, and I thought, well, I'm going to do UTS one more year. And that's when I started to think about the potential for other events in Snowdonia. I mean, it's just by that point became an area that I'd come to know very intimately, and I spotted an opportunity for a sky running event. So that's shorter, much more technical race. And so summer 2018, I spent quite a lot of time developing a route for a brand new event. And then the following year, 2019, that was the first year of that. And then I had this idea to expand on that with one day, eventually 4 or a few different events in Snowdonia that were all trail, sky and ultra running, but different types of events in the same area. And the Apex Running brand, if you like, was sort of launched in sync with UTS, and that was just what I ran my coaching under as well. The coaching, I needed to do that to subsidise UTS initially. So I still run the Snowdon Sky Race and Race Across Snowdonia through Apex Running separately.
Yeah. And the Race Across Snowdonia, what does that involve?
Yeah, that's a 2-day race from Aberfalls on the north coast to Aberdyfi on the south coast. A bit more of an adventure. 2-day. We transport the bags and stuff. The initial idea was to have like a mountain marathon event, a navigational kind of event. So we had UTS, the big gnarly mountain ultra, the sky race, and then something that was a bit more adventurous, I would have felt a bit uncomfortable launching a mountain marathon because I don't have much experience of actually participating in those kind of events. So that sort of progressed into this concept of a point-to-point race, across Snowdonia. I thought, could we do it in one go for a start? But then I looked into the logistics of that, and a 2-day event started to make sense. yeah, I'll admit I was looking at the Dragon's Back race and met a few people who've ran that, and they said that the highlights for them were in Snowdonia, and yeah, sort of had a bit of a light bulb moment where, yeah, could there be like a mini, multi-day over a weekend, just taking in the highlights of Snowdonia. So started designing the route for that in summer 2019. Yeah.
And my understanding is that one of the 2 days is very similar route to that route in the Dragon's Back, right?
There is a bit of trail overlap. It's inevitable, unfortunately. The Dragon's Back I'm sure the organisers won't mind me saying this, but I think their philosophy is more about bagging the certain peaks along the route. It kind of has to stay not true to, but it's inspired by the original event, which was, I think, don't quote me on this, in the 80s or 90s. So it's a very, very tough event. It's not designed to be tough, but just due to the nature of the peaks you have to hit on those first 2 days, it's very tough. Whereas my idea was to try and travel efficiently through the landscape so that you could cover more ground and travel through the Carnadai, the Glidderau, over to Nantgwynant and then the Mulwinian, so that you could experience more of the national park in just a 2-day period. So I quite purposely avoid a lot of the peaks that they do, but yeah, there is a bit of trail sharing.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you agree with the following statement, but as a coach, for me, I think obviously doing specificity around sort of recce's of events, etc. And as UTMB is, and we'll talk about that more in a bit, but Dragon's Back is this world famous race, if you like, that everyone, you set out as a new ultra runner and you think, oh, I could do that one day if I just do the training, blah, 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 blah. But actually, it's good that there are races that are on a sort of smaller scale outside of that cross paths with those events, because I mean, your event would be a really tough individual event over the 2 days, but actually someone who was on that journey and was genuinely going to make it up to that race, your event's an ideal event for them to come and try, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think I coached someone who was training for the Dragon's Back last year, and he did race across Snowdonia. And I think the easiest thing to underestimate is not the elevation gain, it's and the distances of the Dragon's Back race, but just the terrain underfoot. It's really rough in places, and yeah, if you haven't, anyone who's thinking about the Dragon's Back race just needs to come up to Snowdonia and recce those 2 days, particularly the Rhinogs, which is the first half of day 2, I think, on the Dragon's Back race, or the second half of could be wrong there. But yeah, just the terrain. It's really wild in places, and it's slow going, and it's hard to move well over that. If you're used to running on nice buff forest trails, it's a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, not experienced it myself, so I intend to come down one day and play in the mountains as such.
Yeah.
I appreciate it'll be a lot harder than that, but so let's rewind a little bit and go back to you running the CCC then.
Oh yeah.
So
sure.
just for someone who wouldn't understand what that is, just give us a quick overview of what it is, and then tell us a little bit about that experience that you went through.
Yeah, sure. So the CCC stands for Courmayeur, Champaillac, Chamonix. So it's the 3 main towns that you pass through on the second half of the TMB route that UTMB sort of runs along. So it's effectively the second 100k, well, the latter 100 kilometers of the UTMB route. So yeah, but by that, I don't know. I did UTMB in 2015. I did TDS in 16, and I think 17. I just thought, well, I've not done CCC, and it seemed to be one that was growing in profile quite rapidly, and something about it just appealed to me. That year in 2017, I did the Lakeland 100 again, and so 2017 I also spent living in Chamonix for a few months, which was really good. And that was the first sort of time I realised, if you want to do well, i.e. you're aiming for the podium in those kind of races, realistically, well, someone with my modest level of talent needs to sort of live out there and get fully committed, and that's what I did. And that was the first sort of race where I felt I ran well in an international, a race abroad. I'd had countless races before then that had all ended in tears, basically, because I hadn't acclimatized to the heat. Other things specific to the Alps are the length of the descents. They tend to be quite rocky and hard underfoot, like running in the Lake District, and in the summer the ground can be quite soft, which is quite easy. And then there's things like the altitude, the heat, as I mentioned. So I did quite a lot of specific heat training as well. Me as a runner, I know my sweat rate is quite high, so I can lose a lot of sodium very quickly if the heat heats up, and then that has a knock-on effect with dehydration and stomach issues and not being able to absorb stuff. So it was the first time I sort of sweated the details, pardon the pun, and really got focused on what the specifics were of that event, and really gave it my all, really.
I mean, it sounds, I'd be a liar to say that there isn't a part of me that, if I can find that level of dedication to train over over a period of time and get ready and qualify as well, obviously you have to get those qualifying points to do that. Then you go into the ballot, and then you might get in. And I think, how did you qualify for that event? Was it the Lakelands 100?
So the first UTMB, I went through the points system that they had at the time. Fortunately, by 2017, my ITRA, International Trail Running Association, points ranking was high enough to get a guaranteed entry to CCC. So I was able to bypass the lottery effectively as a elite runner. So that's how I got in that year. I'm entered for the CCC again this coming August. So it'd be nice to revisit the trails, and this time the goal is just to finish.
No, it'd be cool. That would be cool. And obviously we all missed your own company and any events missed sort of 2 years worth of doing events at the proper full blown level that they're at. But obviously UTMB did return, and we have seen that return, and hopefully in 2022 and beyond it will continue to be there every year as it has been. But I think so I'm jumping around a bit here, but I find it very interesting because I've never had the conversation with anyone who's taken part in any of those races, let alone where you find yourself now on a day-to-day basis. So here we are, and I say we being for the listeners, I met Mike at the National Running Show, off the kind of introduction from a good friend, Jan and Andrew. They've been on the show on previous episodes, and I went over and had a chat with Mike, and I just wanted to ask Mike a question. We're from little sunny Cambridge, nice and flat, no hills, and people were talking about your races in Cambridge without doing too much research. UTS is a thing, and it is and your other, the sky race as well is talked about, and we are hearing about it. And how does that make you feel?
Yeah, that's great, actually. You can get trapped in a little bit of a bubble as a solo race director, and put a bit too much emphasis on following what your likes and all this, that, and the other. But it's nice to see that further afield outside of that little bubble that people are at least aware. I know from previous research the biggest or the most effective way to grow an event is still through word of mouth. We have a little mini questionnaire at the end, and most people say they, a friend recommended the event to them. So even in the social media adverts day and age, that's sort of a good does your event justice if it's people out there are saying good things about it and recommending it to other people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that in our running club, that's kind of how it's gone. We started off as a running club that kind of, I was the founder of our running club. I don't want to take all the credit, but I was on a journey that was half marathon when I kind of started it. And then I've kind of built up and went to marathon, then did a 50 miler up in the Peak District at Lady Bower. Then I did a 70 miler. And that journey, the members kind of year on year, there was this pay it forward effect within the club where new runners that were doing Couch to 5K with us, by year 3, they were having to go to a marathon. And now we've kind of naturally migrated with a group of people, if you like, that have become interested in ultra running at a an introductory level over the, just pre-pandemic, and now, there's been lots of time to watch YouTube and everything else, and we really want to go for it, some of us, and really experience what the ultra community and world has to offer, because like you've probably found, there's that community that we get in our world. And your races have been participated by some of our runners, and they're at a much higher level than what we've done previously. And obviously now you have the UTS, so Ultra Trail Snowdonia, which somehow, which hopefully you're going to tell us a little bit more about, is the World Series event for the UTMB. So what is that setup? How does that work? What are you allowed to tell us? And sort of just make us understand the process, really.
Yeah, so I mentioned the Ultra Trail World Tour before. That was my goal, was to have an event that was part of that, the UK's only event. So that was a circuit of international events that were part of this series. That was effectively superseded by the UTMB World Series. I was approached around this time last year by UTMB the question was, would UTS want to join this new UTMB World Series? And I didn't fully understand what the setup was, but basically they wanted to acquire the event, and their goal was to form a circuit of events in conjunction with Ironman, of events that they owned that would effectively become the new qualification route to UTMB Mont Blanc. So yeah, I talked about UTMB points in the old qualification method before. That's changed now. Basically, UTMB was getting to a point where it was so heavily oversubscribed, and it was getting harder and harder to get a place, that by forming this new World Series as a qualification route, it will hopefully give the people who really, really want to do UTMB more of a chance of getting in. So yeah, the new, you need to have a UTMB, what they call running stone, from now on, which can only be acquired by finishing one of their World Series events to then go in the lottery. So yeah, a bit of a shift from the old points-based system. There's critics and there are supporters of the new system. So I'm just here to answer the questions, really, and help people understand the new process, really, because it is a bit it's different, and I think that difference is what's causing the confusion. When you break it down, it's not too difficult to understand.
So my initial reaction to what you've said there is this is a good thing. I think I like it. I've not done too much research on that prior to this conversation, but I like it. I like this idea that there's a World Series of events, which in itself may create a desire for runners to go to each one of those as well.
I think that's a bit of we want to create brand loyalty, for want of a better term, but we also want to create a consistent standard of event across the series. So there are very detailed operational guidelines from UTMB that we're required to run the event to, the overall goal is to continue developing the sport of ultra trail running, really. There are some commercial drivers behind it, I'm not going to lie. It is about expanding the UTMB brand more globally, some people might not like the thought of Ironman getting involved in trail running, but I can talk about how that works in a bit. But do
you know what, I was just going to ask, did I hear that wrong? But you did say Ironman, as in the triathlon Ironman brand, yeah?
Yes, yeah. So the new UTMB World Series, certain events are owned by UTMB Group, based in Chamonix, and other events in other territories are owned by Ironman Group, effectively. But that doesn't mean that they're Ironman events, if that makes sense. They're still organised independently by race directors like myself, but Ironman have acquired those events. So some events are owned by UTMB in the series, and some are owned by Ironman, basically.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We could really unpack this a lot, and I'll try and keep it at a level that we kind of try and help people understand the process, and even for myself. But so we don't really know each other from Adam, other than meeting once. We've met on that one occasion, and Jan and Andrew talk very highly of your event, and they say how well organised it was.
Yeah,
My experience doing an Ironman is that company, for all its criticism that it takes, actually always put on awesome events. Like whatever anyone says,
yeah,
as a participant, you can't moan at anything. And I've done 3 of theirs. I've done 2 halves and
okay.
1 full. Um, so yeah, I get there's a commercial driver here, but the marathon runner, if you like, loves this idea of doing the world majors.
Yeah.
So
I,
are we gonna?
I think I only recently learned how expensive some of those are. I was surprised because
Yeah,
in my head, and a lot of UK runners probably think a marathon's like 40 quid, a half is 30. There's quite a
yeah.
consistent benchmark. And I saw the price of Boston. I was like, wow, I mean, I'm sure it's an incredible experience, but that is, yeah, yeah,
And like, yeah, no, I agree. I agree when I looked through it as well. And within the marathon world, there's this desire, and whoever the sponsor is or whoever's plugging the world majors, of course, there's commercially driven aspects to it, but the marathon runner has a goal to complete all 6. Is there a possibility that in the ultra world we may get a similar effect in the years to come with UTS, UTMB?
that's a good question. I think already in the ultra trail world there are bucket list events like Lavaredo in Italy, UTMB obviously, the American ones, Western States, Hard Rock 100. There
So
are
are they part of the UTMB series now?
some of them are,
Yeah.
Western States is Lavaredo, just mentioned. Certain other, the UTMB wanted many of the Ultra Trail World Tour events to join the circuit because they'd already established themselves very much as iconic events in these very emblematic locations. The Eiger Ultra, various other ones. Some of them are quite young. Snowdonia is a young event. So yeah, it's great that they saw the opportunity there and sort of what I was doing, which was effectively emulating UTMB type event in the UK. But they do have what they call the UTMB World Series majors. So each year, and they'll change year to year, they'll have a bigger event on each continent, where you'll get double the running stone. So those need to be events that have got a higher capacity. But could there be like six or more majors each year? Who knows? We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and it's really cool from our perspective as people that listen to this. We've got as far as I know, we're getting early feedback. We're still quite early as a podcast, but we're getting feedback that the range of runner listening to this is quite a big range.
Yeah,
So we've
cool.
got people that are couched to 5K in it that would like the idea of ultra running.
Yeah.
And then we've got the guys that have actually gone and participated in the CCC as well. So, and we've interviewed elite athletes as well. So when I talk and get feedback, this is great because this is really interesting from my perspective as well as from being a fan of the sport. And what I'd say to you, Mike, I think I'm not financially driven, and I would, looking at what you've achieved here, you really have achieved what I would say is something that would deem successful,
Yeah,
because you're joining in with a world known name of our sport.
yeah.
That and now you have an event, your original event is now representing that.
Yeah, no, it's very humbling. You mentioned the Slick website and all that stuff before, but behind the scenes, I'm fortunate. I've got a very supportive dad who's let me live at home rent free for the last few years. I still live there now. Working out of a bedroom. It has been. It's been that stereotypical desperado businessman journey. Early days, and we're not out of the woods yet. I'm still driven and motivated to keep developing UTS. It still does have a couple of years of growth and left in it that I want to maximize its potential really. But it's great to be part of something bigger with UTMB. They're a very friendly bunch as well. You mentioned Ironman. I've met the Ironman UK lot, and they're super nice as well. It's I think people have a preconception about Ironman and what they're about, but they're just as passionate about endurance sports events as any trail runner, and any race director that I know.
Yeah, no, I love the whole. I did it kind of over I built up to half distance over sort of a 2 year period.
Yeah.
Before I then did a half, and then I went through what I would call a 2.5 year period from starting the half to completing my full Ironman. And I've got to be totally honest. I think it was great to be wrapped up in their circle for 2.5 years,
Yeah.
eventually culminating in completing the Ironman back in 2015. And I think, yeah, I mean, this is great. This sounds like, as a fan of our sport, this sounds brilliant because, you know, Premier League football, you know, F1, we get it. There's all this commercialization of sport, and that's cool. And you look how that's developing in, say, women's cricket and women's football in the UK. That's also changing. But why should our sport not have that kind of process and development? If there's the demand out there, why shouldn't we become a sport that can be sort of a bigger part of everyday life? All right, it'll be a bubble, but why can't that bubble just get bigger and bigger?
Yeah, I think there's generally, I do sympathise with the viewpoints that quite a simple sport like trail running should be kept grassroots and things like that. But our goal is not to move people away from that. We don't want to like disrupt other small events. You know, I do a lot of cheap fell races myself and not-for-profit events, and yeah, we think there's room for both really. Yeah, what we'd like to do is just a little bit different. It comes from slightly different place, but we're still, you know, I'm a runner myself, and we are trying to grow the sport. I don't want to say professionalize the sport, but yeah, just put something new on the table really. And yeah, already in the past few years we've seen ultra running breaking into more of the mainstream media, and it seems like you go to a party and someone knows someone who's training for an ultra or has done an ultra, you know, and it's inevitable. It is going to grow in popularity. I don't know if it'll explode the way that, I don't know, cycling did when there was the London Olympics, but it's a growing sport, and I think if UTMB want to be seen as the leaders of the event space, then yeah, they're going to want to try and grow in tandem with that, and yeah, alongside it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I'll echo that, and you probably were there as well. And you know, back in 2020, just pre-pandemic, the running show, the ultra running section, was just basically overcrowded for the whole day. You know, they couldn't get enough people into the stage to listen to the talks, and you know, when you obviously then we missed the 2021 due to the pandemic, but then in the 2022 running show, they increased the size of that area, and quite frankly, it was just as busy, I thought. I don't know what you thought over the weekend, but you know, and it just shows that the interest in this sport, and you know, I think YouTube and Netflix have played a part in that.
Yeah, that definitely helps stoke the aspirational elements of it, and it's great that there's so many prolific filmmakers out there making films about these events and about runners' experience of the events, and yeah, that definitely helps to elevate the status of them and create that, you know, allure around, I've got to do that, you know, and it's really cool.
I mean, Ethan Newbury, you know, the Ginger Runner, and Billy Yang films in America, those guys, but then also the bigger ones that have been out there on Netflix with the Barkley Marathons, all of those, and then actually some of the UK ones as well that are like bigger films on YouTube. Inevitably, that a new ultra runner is going to go onto YouTube and type in ultra running, and they're going to see all of that stuff straight away. That's going to come up, and you know, I think UTMB is very much something that we get shown as a consumer of ultra running, whether we want to see it or not. We get shown it. So I think everything you're saying sounds absolutely brilliant and ideal for people participating in things and pushing themselves to limits that they never thought they could achieve, and a lifestyle and a community that is really supportive. You know, I absolutely love it. I love what you say here today, and I'm definitely 100% behind it. But also, as you point out, those smaller races, it doesn't mean that they won't be there to do and take part in. It's all a process, right? You know, ultra running's a journey. So, you know, whether it be the guys up at Lady Bower 50, you know, up at Lady Bower Reservoir, those guys are great, and you know, it's quite a small event, but it definitely is part of a process, and you would definitely still use that event and go to that event, whoever you were. So, you mentioned the word professionalism. Just on that note, cheeky question, but have you been to a point where you've had anyone who is a sort of pro athlete or a top 10 athlete take part in UTS?
We've got some potentially lined up this year, some bigger names. Just waiting on final confirmation. The start lists are all available to view online now. Yeah, I'm hoping Nicky Spinks and possibly Damien Hall might come back. Yeah, that was another. Maybe it was just a bit of ego, but early on, I did want an event that would attract, the top elites, because at Lakeland you'd get a few big names on a good year, but it'd be nice to have an event in the UK where, maybe a dozen in each event, big names come and all have a good old ding dong together, and settle things. Who's the best on that day? Because we've been through a lot of FKTs for obvious reasons recently, and I love the one reason why UTMB itself turns a lot of heads every summer is that it attracts all the biggest names of the sport, and if we could sort of replicate that in the UK with our best domestic athletes, that would be really cool. But that's the longer term goal.
Yeah, no, we'll keep an eye on it then. We'll keep an eye on it. It'll be good. Be good for the fans' point of view, definitely. So like I said, we could unpack this for hours and we won't do that. We can always get you back on the show and have another chat as the event develops, just to hear how it's going and sort of maybe some stories from out there as well. But if you don't mind, with your experience of where you've started, how you got into it, and where you are now, if you were talking to somebody and you were looking to give them sort of 3 tips to start ultra running, what would you say to someone? What would they be?
Definitely the first one, be patient. I was not patient at all. I wanted to do everything that year. I couldn't even bear the thought of thinking, about a 3-year plan or goals I wanted to do in 2 or 3 years. Maybe that was just my youthful energy getting the better of me. That then feeds into training. Don't go ballistic. It's running generally is a sport that rewards consistency. So if you can just get those short runs in most days, that's better than going mad and doing massive weeks and then getting maybe not injured, but feeling under par for a couple of weeks and having to recover. Just try and focus on long-term consistency, and be really realistic about your expectations. I think a lot of my earlier races, I'd only been running for a couple of years, but I used to start way too fast, and try and hang with the leaders, and then I would just explode. Just be honest with yourself about, do you just want to finish the race, or if you are taking it a bit more seriously and you want to compete, then I'd recommend getting a coach sooner rather than later, and just enjoy it, and as a longer term thing that you want to build into your life. Running's the beauty of it's such a simple sport. It's easy to integrate into your daily routine. So just try and fall in love with it, really, and don't get too hung up on times and positions. And it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's a long term journey. So and enjoy those long days out in the mountains, whether they're alone or with friends, and just enjoy it.
Awesome. So I'm just going to take this opportunity to thank you, Mike, for coming on and actually say what you started as a dream has now clearly grown into something a lot more than that. And we wish you all the best with it, because it's people like yourself that are giving people like us the platforms to come and do this sport on a much more wider and available level. So thanks very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. If anyone listening wants to follow you or look for this, where should they look?
The event Ultra Trail Snowdonia can be found on Facebook and Instagram if you just at Ultra Trail Snowdonia. And then if anyone wants to email me, my emails is michael.jones@utmb.world. And I'm always happy to help people with whether they've got questions about training or events or anything.
Excellent. We'll make sure we put it in our descriptions as well on the podcast itself. So thanks for coming on, Mike. So here we go, guys. There is an episode that I would say probably we managed to unpack a lot of stuff and went very differently to perhaps how we perceived it. And I think there's a lot of information there that perhaps our industry wouldn't mind knowing at this point in time. So if you did enjoy the episode, please make sure you can give us a little review and a star rating on whatever platform it is that you are listening on. And if you thought it was something that you know someone that would like to hear that info, please don't hesitate to share it, whether that be on any platform of podcast or whether that be on the YouTube channel. But for now, guys, we are going to say goodbye, say enjoy your running for another week. And I hope that we can meet here again to discuss more on the Ultra Running Podcast.